Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with.
Nerdarchus Ted.
And today we take on War Cleric versus the Paladin.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
All right, so we had a viewer question come in, said video suggestion.
So JMD Nerd says that the group that he plays with thinks that paladins are nothing but jerks. Their only real exposure is the World of Warcraft game, and even though he has been playing on and off since 2nd edition, he feels his players think that paladins are no good, and there's absolutely no reason to play them. So he wants to know, how do we differentiate the difference between paladins and war clerics, and how do you have a paladin that's not an a-hole to play with?
Oh, well, step one is just don't be an a-hole. I mean, that pretty much can work. From there, there's this assumption that you have to play that particular class a certain way, and it can only be played that way. One of the best examples of a paladin would probably be from the Mel Adams series, Threat from the Sea. It was a trilogy, and he had a paladin in there that really didn't act much like what people would think of as paladin. He was actually very kind, and he was very compassionate, as well as, he had an unorthodox way of going about things. And, he was kind of, as a paladin, proselytizing to someone else who was, fallen from a faith. Not even his faith, I don't think. But the character just became dedicated to kind of like trying to help restore this character's faith. Not any particular deity, I don't think, but just in general.
Right.
And then another good example of a paladin that there's no way on earth you could possibly call this guy a jerk or an a-hole would be Michael Carpenter from the Dresden Files series.
Right. Now, if you follow along with that, Michael is the epitome of compassion. He is doing everything, including the willingness and ability to, if possible or if necessary, lay down his own life for anyone that he feels needs it. And they're willing, the concept of the knights in that world is they're trying to redeem the fallen. They're trying to redeem the bad guys in this world. So they're willing to fight, and when actual combat happens, imagine like not fighting on your turn because you're gonna just talk to the bad guy to make them give up the fight and to rejoin the good side. Like, that's the level that these guys do in that game. And
world, it's not a game.
In that world, my apologies.
Everything's a game under the right circumstances.
Well, there is the Dresden Files RPG using the Fate system, but whatever. So, like, I look at that and I'm like, man, I don't know what I would do or what the players at the table would do if the Paladin, one of the most damaging heavy characters in the game, but no, I'm not gonna fight this round. I'm gonna use persuasion.
Hey, why not persuade while you defend or something? It is absolutely a good example of a character who walks the walk and talks the talk. You know what I mean? And literally, that particular character embraces all the tenets of their religion and their faith, and and at the same time they're very open minded. So
yes.
So that those are two different examples of paladins. One, that aren't a-holes, and have a little more depth to them.
Absolutely.
But the other thing is, so what is a paladin? Well, we kind of did a video about that a little while ago.
So like last week or a week or so ago, we did a video on paladins don't have to be lawful good as a video response to Dawnforge Cast's video. So you can check that out to watch more specifically about paladins and their alignment. But there is a distinct difference between the RP of a paladin and a war cleric.
The paladin is a champion of a cause.
They might serve a deity, they might be on the same mission as the cleric, but for the paladin, first and foremost, is their oath, their cause, the thing that they are striving to do. Whereas to a cleric, clerics first and foremost serve a deity. They are the direct conduits of that deity they're given all of their power, literally just right from that god, and therefore to them, what the deity says goes. And then they might work on the cause as their secondary nature.
Right. So both of them can have a cause. Both of them can have a deity. It's just kind of like where they put their emphasis.
Right.
Is what it comes down to.
Where do your priorities really lie?
Now, I mean, there is also the idea that you could possibly also be a cleric without a god, and there's philosophies and things like that. You know, you could, instead of a god, you could have a religion, but then again, you would replace the religion with the deity, right? And that religion you could be a part of that religion and have a cause, but primarily you would serve that religion. So you know, it'd be wider. You know, it'd be more focused and more specific, I think, than maybe the cause, or it could be a little bit different. But there can definitely be overlap.
Right.
And I also feel like a part of the cleric's thing is to prophetize as well.
Yeah, and that's where I was gonna go, because the cleric typically is the one who is going to go out and share and spread the faith. That is kind of what a cleric typically does. Now, a lot of players I have found over the years don't want to get into that whole aspect. Literally, we just finished up a Gamma World game, and I played the concept of a cleric without actually being a cleric. So, like, I was doing the proselytizing, over and over again. I was trying to actually get people to follow my religion, which was totally a made-up thing because it's Gamma World and there's no gods there. But my character in your game, he is a cleric, and for him it's more about the pursuit of knowledge than it is getting other people to see his viewpoint or worship his god.
So in that case, like, his god has kind of a more of a hands-off approach to it and lets him follow the cause,
right?
And spread knowledge as opposed to spread the religion. And that can change from cleric to cleric. But yeah, so I feel like a war cleric is, basically your deity is a war god. You're going to prophetize and get people to follow that god and whatever his tenets are.
You're going to want soldiers. You're going to want people who are ready and willing to march into battle, march into war. And, that's a little bit of a crossover into paladin, because a war cleric and a paladin, they are both martial. But the paladin is going to be better at it every single time. Like, if they're on par, the paladin is just going to be a better combatant, hands down.
That being said, a war cleric is going to have access to a full array of spells where the paladin doesn't.
Right.
They both get interesting, cool abilities. A few of the abilities for the cleric are actually to help him better at combat, which is kind of like a detriment when you're comparing the two, because the paladin's already good at that,
right?
And his ability, so he's going to always shine there. But again, being able to drop blade barrier, flame strike, gate in an angel or a demon if need be, like that stuff can be pretty handy as well.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're both powerful characters. They're both good choices, but it depends upon, like, when you're deciding what kind of character do I want to play. Paladins, they need charisma, and therefore they're going to be a better face character. They're going to be engaged in combat as a primary martial character. They are the highest melee damaging character in the game, whereas the cleric, they're more a support character. If you go with a war cleric, okay, yes, they can get into combat and they can do some damage, but they are not going to do the kind of damage that paladins have the capacity to do. While yes, you do get access to a full array of spells, you're going to be using small spells to do small effects until you can get things like blade barrier or flame strike, and even then, given the number of smites that a paladin might be able to do, you still might be underperforming in comparison
for damage. Absolutely, but you probably have more versatility and more options at your disposal. And I would say the last thing that really speaks to war cleric or cleric in general, deity, paladin, not necessarily, would be the high level ability of a cleric to go, Oh yeah, Tempest. Yeah, could you get down here for a second and give me a hand? Like they literally get divine intervention.
It is literally a thing that they get at 10th level, and you get that percentile roll,
And at 20th level, it's automatic.
at 20th level it's automatic.
You call,
then
you have
can,
a direct line.
Then you can only do it every 7 days.
Yeah, so which gets weird if you have a religion that doesn't, or if you're a cleric of like a religion that isn't necessarily a god per se.
No, at that point in time, you hit 20th level. You have manifested
The church,
the church,
the church mimic.
Well, no, I was going to say like literally the power of your faith creates that deity.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say. Wouldn't you
Like it might not be a god to be able like
the spirit, like the combined spirit of all the worshipers,
Yes.
kind of manifest. Yeah, I would do the same thing, but I just think it's funny. But yeah, so like that's the other thing that kind of like sways the argument of why the war cleric is like deity, and the paladin not necessarily doesn't have to be. You could definitely make a case for a paladin that has his tenets and his faiths and could literally worship his ancestors, amongst other things. I mean, we've done different videos on this topic as well.
Absolutely. And then when you do that divine intervention, it could literally be your ancestor spirits that appear and deal with the situation as you would see fit.
You guys, what do you think? You think there's a difference between a war priest and a paladin? What do you think they are? How do you play them different? We got a place for that. It's called the comments. You can put them down below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can support us over on Patreon.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy. The group that he plays with thinks that paladins are nothing but jerks. Their only real exposure is the World of Warcraft game, and even though he has been playing on and off since 2nd edition, he feels his players think that paladins are no good and there's absolutely no reason to play them. So he wants to know, how do we differentiate the difference between paladins and war clerics? And
hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with
Nerdarchy Ted.
And today we take on War Cleric versus the Paladin.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
All right, so we had a viewer question come in, said video suggestion.
So JMD Nerd says that
To help restore this character's faith, not any particular deity, I don't think, but just in general.
right.
And then another good example of a paladin that there's no way on earth you could possibly call this guy a jerk or an a-hole would be Michael Carpenter from the Dresden Files series.
Right. Now, if you follow along with that, Michael is the epitome of compassion. He is doing how do you have a paladin that's not an a-hole to play with?
Oh, well, step one is just don't be an a-hole. I mean, that pretty much can work. From there, there's this assumption that you have to play that particular class a certain way, and it can only be played that way. One of the best examples of a paladin would probably be from the Mel Adams series, Threat from the Sea. It was a trilogy, and he had a paladin in there that really didn't act much like what people would think of as paladin. He was actually very kind, and he was very compassionate, as well as, he had an unorthodox way of going about things. And, he was kind of, as a paladin, proselytizing to someone else who was, fallen from a faith. Not even his faith, I don't think. But the character just became dedicated to kind of like trying